Evening, everyone. It looks like all members of the Board of Finance are present tonight. For the record, tonight is March 1st already, approximately 5:30 p.m. And today is the continued public hearing on the City of Milford budget for the 2023-2024 budget years, as well as the Board of Education budget, and we will be taking up the Board of Education budget tonight. And I see a number of members from the Board of Education, including the superintendent and chairperson. So welcome, everyone. So if you would like, you're certainly welcome to start off with any sort of presentation. I think those of you who have been doing this for a while recall that we used to go page by page through the entire document. We'll save everybody the torture of doing that this year, but we will, as we've done, I think, for the last few years, after you've done your presentation, we will probably just go through the executive summary portion of the budget, because I think that gives us some guidance as far as directing some questions and comments to the Board of Education. So.
That's great. Thank you. Are we ready to start? I do have some opening remarks, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. You're welcome to start anytime you like.
All right. So good evening, everyone. I'm Sue Glennon, Chair of the Board of Education, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to engage in this dialogue with you this evening. While I do wish we were together in person, our partnership is an important part of the budget process. So I think it's safe to say that we are post-pandemic now, but even so, we continue to be faced with post-pandemic era challenges. And it's imperative that we continue to support students and staff by providing what they need to thrive in Milford Public Schools. Students must be supported in the recovery of lost academic ground, and we must continue to address their social and emotional needs. Today, this means acknowledging their ability at a very young age to work together, to ask probing questions and voice opinions, to make choices and lead their own learning, and to be contributing members of their own communities. That's what school looks like today. With the potential for shortages in essential personnel, we must support staff by honoring their agency, which is defined as their capacity to act purposefully and constructively to direct their own professional growth and contribute to the growth of their colleagues. That applies whether they are teaching, providing paraprofessional services, keeping our schools clean, driving a school bus, or feeding our children. This budget reflects our commitment to honor and support staff and students, collectively numbering close to 6,500 individuals. And it's driven by today's realities: increased salaries due to new contract cycles, increased costs for just about everything we use, increased costs for services, many of which are bound by contracts or mandates, old and new, and the growing social and emotional needs of our young people, which cannot be ignored. And let me add, the reality is that this is a status quo budget and includes no funding for new programming. So I often recall a comment that was made by an administrator maybe 20 years ago that new college graduates don't leave school being an exceptional teacher. They leave having the potential to be an exceptional teacher that developed during their career. Thus, the importance of ongoing professional learning on high quality instruction. And similarly, students don't all start on the same page or with the same experiences, but they all have the potential to learn and be productive members of society. And it's our job to meet each young person wherever they are, emotionally and academically, to help develop their potential over their 13 or so years with us in this modern age that is vastly different than when you or I were in school. And that's what this budget reflects. As I've said to you before, teachers want to work in Milford, and we should want to keep it that way. According to recent reflections from a group of visiting superintendents who observed and interacted with our teachers and coaches, our teachers feel safe to take risks and try new things. They value collaboration and learning from their peers. They appreciate instructional coaches as thought partners where they model, provide feedback, and problem solve in real time. And there is recognition that it takes time and effort, as I said, to hone one's skills as a teacher. These are the experiences recognized by visitors and valued by our staff, which in my opinion, makes our district special and in turn correlates into relevant and engaging experiences for our young people. This budget, which I'll state again, has no new funding for new programming. It honors and sustains the work that we have done in past years. So across our geographic area, in discussion with other board chairs, I'm seeing Board of Ed budget increases ranging from 4% to almost 10%. In similar districts, the majority being in the 6 to 7% range. So we are not an anomaly. Yes, this budget reflects a greater increase than you've seen in recent years, but with good reason and not without pause and careful consideration by my colleagues on the board. We could have easily added to the superintendent's status quo proposal, but we did not. But we recognize that our investment in our schools, is an investment in our future. It's the most meaningful service that we provide at the local level. So I ask that you reflect on the details that Dr. Cutaia and staff will share with you tonight, that you ask probing questions like the littles do. Ask lots of them. We want to have lots of questions so that you leave tonight with a deep understanding of the reasons behind the numbers and that you give our request honest and careful consideration. So I thank you again for your time. And I'll leave it to Dr. Cutaia now to give you some specifics. And then again, we hope you have lots of questions. Dr. Cutaia.
Chairwoman Glennon, thank you for your presentation.
Well, maybe not that many questions, but
Lots of
just kidding. Thank you, members of the Board of Finance, members of our team who are here, members of the public who are here to hear more about our proposed budget. Mr. Lima, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. So what I think I'm going to do is run through the slides and take questions afterwards. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Just need a moment to tee up my screen. There we go. Okay, I think you can all see that first screen, right? So again, thank you for allowing us an opportunity to engage in a dialogue about the proposed budget that is before you. In typical fashion, I will go through some of the highlights on the accomplishments of this current school year as a result of the support that we've been provided through the budget, and then move into the proposed budget that's before you for 23-24, break down the detail, what some of the numbers mean, and then take questions from the board here. So this is a slide that I hope is just so familiar now. In my 5th year, we've been using this as a demonstration that our path does not waver in Milford Public Schools. We're not one of those schools that goes from initiative to initiative, and that staff don't know what we're doing from year to year. We are steadfast in 3 key areas, and that is the vision of the learner, our focus on relationships, and the model for high quality instruction. It is those 3 things that drive all of our decisions, including those budget priorities that are before you. In May of 21, the Board of Education adopted 9 commitments. I won't read these to you, but they range from developing a community of learners based on relationships, an environment that is safe and secure, addressing race and equity and social justice, supporting our staff members with professional learning, and ensuring that we have operational systems and facilities that are 21st century ready for our young people. Additionally, our Board of Education adopted 4 goals, which are in alignment with our vision of learner. Those goals can be summarized in the areas of scholarship, personal development, citizenship, and creativity and innovation. And I assure you, all of our budget plans align to both the commitments and these goals. On an annual basis, our board considers priorities and assumptions. Those priorities are here in front of you. I will not read the entire slide to you, but know that a focus on instruction, curriculum and assessment, wellness and development, professional learning, human resources, class sizes, physical learning spaces, and learning going beyond the classroom are priorities as adopted by the Board of Education in October of 22. The next couple slides summarize the assumptions that were adopted by the Board of Education. Again, these are predictors to the best of our ability of what could be impacting our budgeting plans for 23-24. So you'll see that we as a school system are not immune to the impact of inflation that's hitting all of us in businesses and even in our personal homes. We are feeling that impact as a system as well. We're also feeling the impact, although it was planned and we were transparent about it. At the time, we had an immediate need for some staffing and we used grant funds. And we are in year 2 of 3 of moving those staffing positions over to our general fund. So you'll see the impact of that as we speak today. We've baked in the impact of enrollment. We've also baked in the potential of changing staffing and program designs. We've considered the inflation and how that is impacting wages, whether those are hourly wages or salaries. We have the impact of health insurance plans, special education costs across the state and the nation are continuing to rise in the area of out-of-district tuition and transportation. And I will say here as a side note, we do an excellent job in supporting our young people in-house to a very, very great degree. The last resort here is to put students out of district, but there are times when we have to do that. We also see the impact of transportation costs. Those are annually going to increase at least by 3% because we're within a contract. We also have the impact of committing to our SRO program. And then, of course, throughout this process, we're all constantly looking for efficiencies through our budgeting process. So what has this year brought to us, and including the end of last year? We can celebrate with the class of 22. We were able to successfully graduate 401 students. And by the way, 166 of those students are graduating with honors. It's a very large percentage of our graduating class. 81% are going on to a formalized educational experience, either in 2 or 4 year colleges. 6% are going into career education, 11 straight into employment, and 2 to serve in the military or other plans. We see that we'll also continue to do well as far as those students who are scoring as AP scholars, and you'll see those numbers there: AP scholars, scholars of honors, and distinction. But in total, 154 students were named AP scholars. We continue to invest in the facilities across the system with the support of this great city. We were able to accomplish this summer 340 projects, albeit some small, some much larger. You'll see pictures of some of those facility projects here. We have great successes each and every day. They are so difficult to enumerate. I'll have to tell you, Board of Finance members, I had to eliminate many slides from this presentation that I included for the Board of Ed. I can't stop going on and on about how great our kids are doing. So if you want the full slide deck from the Board of Ed presentation, I'll send it to you because it really does go into greater extent about our accomplishments. But you'll see some everyday accomplishments here, ranging from inside the classroom and outside the classroom. Some more accomplishments by our young people being recognized by elected officials. Some of the newer initiatives, the flexible furniture, Spanish, integration of phonics instruction, our school counselors. Those are things that are already in place. They're not new to 23-24 budget. This is what's already happening in our classrooms. A big focus this year, a big push of implementation on intentional play and executive functioning. Ms. Glennon did mention our post-pandemic work, and this is the just right work for the just right time. If our kids needed to focus on play as a tool for learning, and if we ever had to focus on executive functioning, it is now. We are seeing the need for socialization and integration and face-to-face play and work, and we are already seeing the return on investment on this. So that takes me to our next level of work. There's always next level of work. So we have a great school system. There are great things happening, but we have to continue to build on that. And we have to be responsive to our student needs. And we're seeing some student needs that are arising that look a little different than the past. So this budget is in the amount of $106,488,950, which is an increase of 4.392% over last year's budget. And as Ms. Glennon has mentioned, I have conversations with my colleagues on a very regular basis. I'm part of a number of networks and associations that keep me in touch with Connecticut superintendents. And this budget year is particularly difficult for everyone. In fact, in our DIRG, we're one of the lower increases, as Ms. Glennon mentioned. It's ranging from 4 to 10%. So I will go into a little bit as to what's causing this large increase for us. So let's get started there. Here's a view of breaking down the 4.39 that I want to spend a little bit of time here. So I'm gonna talk you through some of the numbers now, and you will see the numbers in slides to come. So let's take a look at salaries and benefits for a minute. Of the 4.39%, and I'll drop the 2 in talking, but you'll know it's 4.392. So of that increase in the area of salaries and benefits, and as a reminder, I'm sure you know this, 77.36% of our whole budget is on salaries and benefits. We are an organization, we are a business that is human capital driven, meaning 3/4 of our budget is about salaries and benefits. People do our work. So of that 4.39, 3.43 actually makes up this first category. So 3/4 of the entire increase that we are asking for is salaries and benefits. And I'm going to break that down even further. We are in the first year of a new 3-year teacher contract. We negotiate with this bargaining unit every 3 years. The first year of that 3-year contract impact is now. We're seeing it in 23-24. $1.6 million alone, with nothing else happening next year, is in the teacher's contract. 1.6 million, which amounts to 1.53% of the increase. Let's continue in this category. In this category also is 4.8 quote unquote new positions. They're not new. They just live on the grant. If you recall, and I even recall the conversation with you a couple of years ago, we were given the benefit of ESSER and ARP funds. We made a very transparent decision that we were going to invest in school counselors. It was already a decision we were going to do actually, but then COVID hit and we got money and we thought the need is now. So let's plan to move 1/3 of those positions over each year for 3 years. Well, we're in year 2 of that plan, and that means we have to move 4.8 positions off of the grant onto the general fund. 4 of those positions are counselors. This category alone is 0.82% of the increase. So if you're keeping track, we're adding up, right? We haven't even left salaries yet, and we're already over 2.5%. So I'm sorry, 2.3%. Benefits. There is increase in benefits of about $308,874, and that makes up 0.3%. So this category altogether, and there are a couple other pieces here that I did not break down for you, but salaries and benefits of the 4.392 makes up 3.43. So three quarters of our request is salaries and benefits. Let's keep moving on. Contracted services and tuition. Primarily here, the increase is in the area of special needs tuition. We just talked about that a little bit. Our needs of students with special needs is increasing. We do our very best to meet their needs in-house as much as possible, but we are seeing some students who need additional services outside of our system, and some of those contracted services that go along with that. This category is $329,964. This makes up about 0.32% of our increase. Transportation, we have rising fuel costs in both regular ed and special ed. Again, we're a system not immune to what's happening in our economy. This is hitting us at the tune of $311,987, or 0.31%. And then there are new state mandates in the area of HVAC and making available feminine products for our young people. That is legislated, and that's going to amount to being about $155,000 in the proposed budget that's before you, which is about 0.15%. So all of this slide primarily, with the exception of a very, very small slither of system improvements, comes out to 4.39%. So let's move to system improvements for a minute. So these are improvements that will occur next year in hopes if the proposed budget in front of you is moved forward. We hope to continue to grow the Spanish program at the elementary level. We have made a pre-K-5 commitment that is in place currently. We would like to round that out and be one of the few districts in the state of Connecticut that's offering a PK-12 world language instructional system. That's something that this city should be very proud of accomplishing. We'll continue to invest in the current, using current monies in classroom libraries, developing science-based assured experiences. At the middle school, we are transitioning over to a different math program, continuing the purchase of English language arts books, more language libraries. Some robots are being purchased along with some musical instruments. At the high school level, again, continuation of investing in libraries, books, some equipment like a pottery wheel. We have such a high demand on via student enrollment that we're looking to add additional courses in CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant certification courses, and changing up some Spanish courses available, and then replacing severely outdated AP Physics and Statistics books. District-wide, we want to make some different investments in replacing cameras and radios and reorganizing our HR department. So I just wanted to just reassure this board that we go back to zero every year when we're budgeting. We don't start with the base of 102 million and now let's add more and now let's add more. I assure you that we go back to making budget decisions based on the principles, or in our case, commitments, goals, assumptions, priorities. We have key strategy, as I showed you on the second slide, the vision of the learner, framework for relationships, and HQI. We come up with priorities based on the kids in front of us and the staff that we have. We develop the programs and initiatives based on what we want to implement in 23-24, and then we develop the budget around that. So I want to assure this board that we're constantly revisiting every line item each year. So I'd like to include this quote from Steve Jobs. People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are, and you have to pick carefully. So I assure you, ask any administrator, I know how to say no. And so here's a list of a few things that we have said no or not yet to. In fact, when the budget proposals through the process I just explained to you first came to me, it amounted to a 14% increase. Well, we know that's not happening. And that doesn't even include what we were requesting in buildings and grounds, which would have amounted to 21.5%. So this slide actually demonstrates for you some of the things we said no or not yet to. There were more musical instruments we wanted to buy. There was some cardio equipment we needed, some high school math furniture, world language changes. I'm not going to read this whole list, but please know and be assured that we have rejected ideas in an effort to keep this budget proposal as tight as possible. And I should say, if you want me to send this slide presentation to you, Mr. Lima, to distribute to the board members, I'm happy to do that. So we do have opportunity for offsets, and I figured we'd be possibly talking about ARP and ESSER, so I went ahead and put the slide in here. So our ARP, our ESSER funds are coming to a close, and ARP funding must be exhausted by 2024. And we have made some purchases, and there are some requirements around the expenditure of both of those grants. And there are some percentages in the area of instruction that we have to hit in one of those grants. But here's some of the things that we did use. We purchased or invested in using those grants. I'll give you a minute to read this list. But those are some things we did invest in, and oops, sorry, could potentially be considered offsets because we use grant funding to purchase and invest in areas that we needed to. So in addition to those offsets, we took a look at line items and came up with about $150,000 there of savings in those three categories of utilities, other support, and equipment. I made an assumption that we would be talking about our mental health support services this evening because we're moving so many positions off of the grant. You may have seen this slide. I think I showed you this slide 2 years ago when we were first considering counselors. And this is the U.S. Surgeon General advisory in December of 21, warning us, like, you know, raising the red flag, saying that there are many mental health challenges our children are facing. And this is not just something that Milford is facing. This is a crisis across the nation. 40% at that time in December 21, 40%, there was a 40% increase in feelings of persistent sadness and hopelessness. Sorry. So I decided to actually take a look at our stats a little bit. And while I can go into more detail during our discussion, we are seeing a significant uptick in some student-related issues and behaviors. You know, one statistic that sticks out to me is we are having a more than doubled our chronic absenteeism. And I'm not comparing it to COVID. I'm comparing it to before COVID. And we know that chronic absenteeism is a symptom. It's a sign for other problems for young people. So we are experiencing some of these issues with our young people in the area, not just of chronic absenteeism, but the need for psychiatric committals, 211 calls, DCF referrals, emergency personnel responding to our schools because of suicidal ideation or threat to others, or disturbance in school. So we're seeing an uptick in all of those areas in our schools, hence needing more mental health support. I also thought it would be good to mention that right before the pandemic hit, we had a system analysis conducted by a third party. One could call it an audit of our school counseling department. And these were the recommendations. This is actually a slide I pulled out of our presentation to the board and in the documents we had. That these were the recommendations that came from an outside review of our programming. And if you notice that some of these things stand out to me, that we should be investing in mostly tier 1 intervention. Tier 1 means every kid gets help. We don't wait for a crisis to happen. Another recommendation is that 80% of staff time should be spent with kids, not helping kids with a schedule per se at the high school, but really helping kids about what they're facing. Another recommendation, which we are not tiptoeing into and easing our way into, is mental health screening tools. And those would be used by mental health providers, experts like school counselors, school psychologists, social workers. And you'll see some of the other recommendations, which include mental health intake systems, and professional learning, and reaching out beyond our walls to partner with other agencies. So I'm going to read this slide to you. I know there are a lot of words and I've broken all the PowerPoint rules here, I know, but I felt like this quote from Beverly Kingston, who's the director of University of Colorado Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence, which was published just a couple months ago, is important for us to ponder, because really this is prevention and investing ahead of time. When we study the events and circumstances leading up to school shootings, we repeatedly find the same patterns. People knew something was wrong with the person prior to the attack, but they did not know who to tell, how to tell them, or how to intervene. In these retrospective studies, we find many missed opportunities to address the warning signs in the shooter. In our study of the Arapahoe shooting in Colorado in 2013, we identified 27 missed opportunities to intervene. And in the Parkland shooting, there were at least 69 missed opportunities. A key violence prevention strategy focuses on developing integrated systems to identify and address behavioral warning signs for violence. These systems include bystander reporting and response, information sharing, behavioral threat and suicide risk assessment and management, and coordinated school and community-based mental health services. We also know that building a positive culture and climate in our schools and communities is foundational for effective violence prevention. For example, a positive school climate benefits individual students and the overall school environment by fostering relationships that promote healthy youth development, prevent problem behavior, and encourage bystander reporting. In these environments, trusting, respectful, and caring relationships are prioritized. Youth and adults care about and watch out for each other, and exclusionary discipline practices are reduced. I believe that key jobs for school counselors, social workers, and school psychologists is very related to the thinking of Beverly Kingston here, that they are key to ensuring that we are looking at behavioral threat and suicide risk assessments and coordinating school and community-based mental health services. So we believe that these key individuals are key to the well-being and mental health of our young people. And finally, I will say that all three positions, all three of these roles are supported by guidance and comprehensive frameworks for work at the state and national level. And you'll see those images of those documents here. So back to numbers. Let me just move my screen. This is a visual representation of that initial slide where I was talking through the breakdown of each category. So you'll see visually here that of the 4.392%, 3.43 is based on salaries, and then the breakdown of all the other pieces. This is historically, we give you this graph to review over the last 15 years, the increases. Another visual for you to consume is a breakdown of the entire budget by category. You'll notice between salaries and benefits, again, it confirms the 77.36% of the budget that goes to salaries and benefits, and the breakdown of other categories. I think this chart is important to note that even though it is reflected in the executive summary, which we're about to talk about, I realize. But you'll notice where some of the big jumps are compared to where some of the reductions are. And I always worry about when there are reductions in the 6, 7, and 8,000 series, because that's where our curriculum and professional development and student activities all live. And if you notice that educational supplies, equipments, all those categories in 6, 7, and 8, actually the net is a reduction. which supports what Ms. Glennon is saying, that while we have some system improvements baked into this, there's no new money supporting those. The new money we're asking are really supporting those 4 big categories I reviewed already with you. And happy to answer some specific questions as they come up. And just a final reminder that all of this is based in the 3 things that are very important to us. And we don't waver, we are steadfast in our commitments. And that's all for me, Mr. Lima. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kataya. It was very informative. I appreciate the presentation, as I'm sure the other members of the board do as well. So I think, as I alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, we will, I think it's just as a format to open some discussion and question for the members of the board. I think it might be best just to simply start in the executive summary section of the budget, rather than go into the detailed section of the budget. And because the summary covers most, if not all, of the areas of detail, and we can direct the conversation using that as our guide and go from there. So I think the first few pages are as Chairperson Glennon's address to the citizens, and then Dr. Kataya's address. If there are any questions or comments on those 2 particular sections, open the floor up to members of the board. I'll also ask Dr. Kataya if there's any other members of your of the Board of Ed wishing to speak, or I think your presentation is complete at this point.
Yes, I invite my team to jump in as well. Thank you.
Okay, they're certainly welcome to. Thank you. Well, I'll jump in at this point. I see I've been going back to some of the old budget books, and I see actually back in about 5 years ago, the 2018-2019 budget book, there were listed as 14 guidance counselors. And then I think we have the same number of guidance counselors. Well, actually, counselors going up from 14 to 21 at this stage. Could you, I know you touched upon some of the mental health challenges and goals a few moments ago, but can you explain the, the counselor's role within the school system as opposed to a school psychologist or social worker?
Sure.
That
I'll
seems to
kick
be
things
where
off.
the primary increase seems to be at this juncture.
Yep. Happy to continue this conversation. I know we've been having it for a couple of years. I'll kick it off and then invite Mr. Brown to join me as well. So just in summary, Mr. Lima, we have 1 counselor in each elementary school, 2 in each middle, and I believe it's 4 in each high school. And the roles as students progress in age tend to shift a little bit. And as I mentioned in one of the reviews that was done of this district, we had actually a gap in providing tier 1 instruction for all children. So prior to counselors, particularly at the elementary level and the middle school, kids saw a school psych or social worker primarily when there was a need, when we're moving into a problem area, or it may be additional support that a child needs with various skill sets. One of the big primary holes that we've been able to fill at the elementary and middle school is that every kid gets comprehensive school counseling, everybody. That we're able to deliver tier 1 instruction, that every kid sees the counselor. It's primarily a push-in model where they do whole group instruction. So it is a big shift in that all kids have access to school counselors. And we could not say that prior to this grant. We could only say that at the elementary and middle, that if a kid needed extra help, they got it through a school psych and social worker. But Mr. Brown, I'll ask you to expand on that thinking.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I think the primary difference between the school counselor's role and the role of the school psychologist and social worker is the school counselors work in a primarily prevention model. And what that means is we recognize that there are emotional difficulties and challenges that our students are coming into the schools with, which is different than it was 10 years ago or more, for a variety of reasons that we don't have to get into. But what we're doing with our school counselors is they are in a role where they're teaching students skills that they need to better regulate their emotions, to make better decisions for themselves, to interact more effectively with their classmates and with their teachers, and to have increased awareness of what their own strengths and skills are, and to have an awareness of the differences of their classmates and the similarities that they have with their classmates. So there's a focus on improving their behavior by improving how they interact with each other and how they understand themselves. Along with that, we're also beginning at the upper elementary grades and more of an emphasis in middle school on career guidance and helping students to see what their skills and talents are and how those can translate into setting goals for themselves, setting plans for themselves, choosing the coursework that they need to start looking at, with our expansion of CTE offerings and elective offerings in the middle school, and growing that into the high school. The school psychologists and social workers got more primarily involved with students when the prevention work has not been effective, which it always isn't, and they focus on more intensive counseling with students in school, and conducting evaluations to get a better and richer understanding of the needs of students. There's a federal law that says school districts are required to conduct comprehensive evaluations for students who continue to struggle academically, even when we do put prevention efforts in place. Most of our school psychologists conduct around 40 evaluations a year, and sometimes more than that. So they're busy with that, and an evaluation on average takes about 15 hours to complete, beginning to end. So it's a important, valuable, and time-consuming process. Social workers coordinate with our community agencies, and they are first to respond frequently to students who are presenting with suicidal ideation, self-injury, and those other crisis situations that come up. All three of these roles interact to conduct threat assessments. We did a comprehensive training program last year so that we could do behavioral threat assessment, which is the gold standard to prevent violence from taking place. That included our school resource officers, Captain Del Monte from the police department, and the social workers from the police department. We organized that training and invited our partners from the police department to participate with us, and that has been a very important connection.
Thank you for that information.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask a follow-up question.
Yes.
So the school counselors, social workers, school psychologists, those are all certified staff. So do they all have distinctly different certifications, or is there any overlap between those three different categories?
Yeah, so all of them are master's level or beyond with their training. So they all have graduate level training. Typically, it's a 60 credit hour program that they go through. They all do an extensive internship. And the State Department of Ed categorizes them differently. So there are different requirements for the graduate training, and then different requirements that the State Department of Ed says they need to meet to get certified through the State Department of Education.
Understood. Thank you.
I also have a follow-up question to the certified staff. Notice there's a supervisor of equity and engagement. It's a new position. Can you just expand on that? Was there a critical reason for that it's moving off of the grant and into the city's funding?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. So again, 2 years ago, when we built the budget for the grant, we intentionally built in a position to focus on equity and engagement. And that was also part of the 3-year plan on moving that position over to general fund. It's a 0.8 because 0.2 of that position is being paid out of a grant that helps us focus on equity and engagement. So 0.8 comes to the general fund. That individual actually has just been onboarded with Milford Public Schools, is already making a significant impact on supporting students and families. And so we're seeing actually quite a significant need for support of some of our children, of all of our children in this area. We're going to be providing more to our Board of Ed, and happy to provide more to you in May, June, after our staff member has been with us for a few months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And is that role too? Did I hear you right? Is that part of the ESSER 2 grant?
It is part of the grant. Yeah, it's part of ARP, I believe. All right, Jim, it's ARP, not ESSER. Is it? I'm sorry, Mr. Moulton, I get the two mixed up.
Yes, it is ARP
Thank you.
that we've been funding that position out of.
Sorry, is that still being funded through the grant, or has it been moved over to the budget? I can't.
It's the 0.8 that's being moved over to the budget.
For 23-24.
Yes,
And that's part of the phase in over 3 years.
yes, sir.
As an administrative position.
It is an administrative position.
What was the original intent of these grants? I mean, they were COVID related, right? I mean, was it the purpose to say, hey, we want to staff school districts up to help with some of the fallout that's going to come of kids being displaced, kids having to remotely learn, and all the different ramifications that come with COVID? Was that the primary purpose of these?
Well, I don't think staffing was a primary or only purpose. There are many school districts that invested in various staff members that are being faced with what we're faced now. But we were intentional in this. We from the very beginning, so I'll just rewind a little bit. I'm sorry. In 1819, 1920, we were already identifying the need for counselors. And we were already talking about using the next 4 to 5 years to use the budget process and the curriculum writing process to onboard a school counselor at each elementary school and additional counselor at the middle. That's always been the plan. When we received ESSER and ARP and we started to see the incredible impact on the mental health of young people, we felt like we had no choice but to go ahead and onboard those members, those staff members, to help our kids. And we said out loud, even to this board, that we are going to spend the next 3 years bringing 1/3 of those positions onto the general fund. That was always the out loud plan. What we saw our ESSER and ARP was as an opportunity, because we didn't think we could wait 4 or 5 years to start getting onboarding help for our kids. Like, there's a somewhat of a urgency that our kids need the support. So we felt like we were being responsive to our student needs. So I don't think, Mr. Moulton, that it was 100% meant to hire a bunch of people. Certainly everyone was cognizant of a funding cliff, but we were transparent and intentional about, let's take 1/3 of the staffing and move it over each year. And next year we'll have the same conversation. It'll be the last transition of, I think we have about 4 positions left. Jim, I'd have to lean on you, either 4 or 5 to bring over, so.
If I could jump
Yes,
in
there-
from the
there-
board's perspective. I'm sorry,
There
from the
are,
board's
an addi-
perspective.
4.
I'm sorry,
from
Miss.
From the board's perspective, this is also a result of a state mandate that school districts implement a K-12 comprehensive school counseling program. And so the question comes up a lot about this. And the way I look at it, school counselors, they're the former guidance counselors, and they're educators first. You know, they have an educational background first. They're not clinicians. So there's a little bit of a difference between a teacher that will approach counseling from a proactive and preventative mode to a clinician that might be addressing a need in a reactive mode as children are displaying certain symptoms or needs. But it stems from the state mandate that we provide a comprehensive K-12 school counseling program that must be delivered by certified school counselors. That's the mandate. They want highly qualified certified school counselors delivering this curriculum. And as my fellow board member, Emily McDonough Souza, said, even if there wasn't a state mandate, this is the right thing to do for our kids. There's a great need and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. How do you how would they define success in adding more counselors? Like, is there a way to quantify, like, okay, we've seen, overall mental health improve because of their work with the children, or is there a way to define success when it comes to those additional roles?
Well, I
I
think,
want to say, go ahead, Mr. Brown, but I'll jump in when you're done.
Sure. So yeah, there's some metrics that we could look to. One, some data that we continually collect and have been for years is the number of behavioral office referrals for disruptive behavior. So we'd like to see a reduction in those office referrals. An improvement with chronic absenteeism would be another easily accessible indicator that we could compare over several years to see what's happening with that. Obviously, academic improvement, particularly in traditionally at-risk groups of students. So we'd like to see that academics are improving for students across the board. One thing that's difficult to know is it's difficult to know who didn't develop anxiety because we did the prevention work. It's difficult to know who didn't develop depression because we did the prevention work. So I think, that's unquantifiable, but I think we could agree that those cases that don't emerge are equally important. It's just we can't measure that. But those other metrics are readily available for us.
Yeah, thank you. That helps explain it. And my last question on the counselors part here. So we have 4. Next year, we're going to see 4 again, right? Because we're just working those into the budget. So by this time next year, you'll be reminding us of this conversation, and then we'll be sitting here looking at 25 proposed school counselors.
No, because
think
they're
that-
already there. They're already
Yeah.
there. So it's 8 elementary, 6 middle, correct? 14, and then however many are at the high school total. Is that correct, Dr. Kutaya?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Fadigan, how many are each high school?
There's 5 at each high school
Thank you.
and 1 at the academy.
That's
Great.
correct.
And Jim, was that a 4 FTEs coming over from the grant?
Yes, that's correct.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, to satisfy the state, they have to be certified?
Yes, sir.
Because it just seems like they're maybe it's an unfunded mandate, but it's like the expensive option. That if you had just more adults in the room and kids made connections to an adult, does it have to be a counselor?
Well, I think I go back to what Mr. Brown was saying, that there's specialized training for this. It's not just any old adult. There is graduate level training on how to be a school counselor. This is not going down the school counselor's office and playing Chutes and Ladders and having a lunch bunch. It's not like that anymore.
Mhm.
It is much more intentional. There's a full written curriculum. There are some pretty serious topics on there that our kids are grappling with. So it is expensive, but the other alternative is to take counselors away from other schools in our system and redeploy them, and they spend less time with other kids.
Mhm.
And it's a part-time basis that they just show up on Monday morning and say, hey, kids, here's the counselor if you need her. And Mr. Arnold, honestly, what we're seeing in our schools, our kids need more than that. So I'm glad that I was reminded of the unfunded mandate. I think I forget about it because it's just a need. And I was already planning to go to the board, if I had not already mentioned it somewhere in my 6-month planning, that we need support at the elementaries. Like that, it was a hole to fill. So it is mandated, but it's also needed.
Well, in
What's
terms
the
of
state's
getting it-
formula? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead.
what's the state's formula for mandating? Like, are we like, what's the ratio of students to counselors that the state wants to see?
Mr. Brown, there's something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the State Department of Ed goes along with the American Counseling Association recommendation, which is 1 counselor for every 250 students.
Does the proposed level meet that?
Mm,
We're
well, there's
very
one
close.
counselor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we're very close to that.
Recommendation, or that's what they're requiring?
Mr.
That's a
Mullen, I'm not
recommendation,
sure.
I believe.
Yeah, I don't think it's a requirement.
So 5,300.
The ASCA, the ASCA framework, that's a recommendation, but that's the national recommendation, not from the CSTE.
So no, Mr. Moulton, we don't want to miscommunicate. The state is not requiring that there be 1 for every 250. That's a best practice that comes out of national research.
So we're right about there, 21. Based on current enrollments, 5274 back into 21.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody?
Hello, Ms. Ranges.
Hi there. I'm really happy to hear that these social workers are able to get into classrooms and engage with students, and they're accessible to all students, not just anybody who's having difficulty at the moment. Are all these positions filled right now in Milford?
I think
Yes.
yes.
Excellent. I know that the teacher shortage in our mental health currently, that's great to hear.
I think it's harder to find school psychologists these days, but we've had good fortune with school counselors.
One general question. Are paraprofessionals given benefits?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, since we seem to be focused on staffing at the moment, I have a staffing question as well. So again, I know I sound like a broken record with enrollment, but going back a few years to again, to use 2018 or 2019, 2020, 2018, 2019 as a benchmark, we had approximately 5,595 students as opposed to today's enrollment anticipated to be, I think, 5338. So about 250 less students this current year or the upcoming year versus 5 years ago, more or less. And for certified teaching staff, we had approximately 457 certified teachers five or so years ago, and now we have 472 certified teachers. So is there some rationale with, you know, a significantly lower student body and more certified teaching staff? And that would be, you know, seems to be a little bit of a disconnect to me that there would be fewer students and more
Yeah.
teachers.
I think a couple ways to look at that is 200 kids don't all come out of one grade level. We've actually had some reductions at the elementary level, but those kids typically work their way through the system. We try to be responsive at the high school to student interest and enrollment. So what you'll probably be finding if you do an analysis of class size at the high school might be smaller now, but the last thing we want to do is not offer courses because our numbers have gotten smaller. So that's a hard decision to make at a comprehensive high school, right? Like, so as that number decreases, do you decrease the number of courses, eliminating options for kids? We've also had additional support staff like the counselors that are before you that we went ahead and added. So whether they were so they're all already baked into the FTE number. And
Sorry.
we've also had an increase in special education needs. So we have had additional teachers there.
Right,
Mr.
but I
Lehman,
know you don't have the book in front of you, but the numbers I referred to were teachers regular ed, 472 now versus 457 in 2019. You're not necessarily eliminating positions, but it seems to be adding positions for a fewer number of students.
yeah, I
So
think
one
I
thing
would,
that comes off the top of my mind, for instance, is, we've increased foreign language instruction in the elementary school. So those would be additional teachers that were added for that purpose. I'm sure they're going back into our historical budget work. There would be explanations as to what some of the other increases might have been from.
Yeah, and I realize it's difficult year to year to make changes because your classroom sizes may be different at different grade levels. But this trend's been going now for probably, my oldest book is 5 years old, at least that I could find, but if you go back 10 years, it was probably closer to 6,000 students in the system. So
I also believe, Ms. Glennon, that we made a commitment in 2019 to keep grades 3 through 5 at 23 instead of 25.
We reduced the recommended class size for
Class
some of
size.
the elementary. So
And that was only
added
about
a
4
few.
years ago.
We've also added science, dedicated science teachers in each of the elementary schools.
Yep.
Science
So that's-
specialists.
Yep, science teachers in each one, right? I now that I probably just need to think about it a little bit, Mr. Lima. As Ms. Glenn and I are going off, we're coming up with some of those.
All right, no, that's fine. I don't mean to certainly, come out of the blue with 5-year-old statistics, but
Oh, so
I
it's a
think it
difference
does
of
give some perspective as to where we are today versus, where we were
difference of
5
15.
years ago. And we've
It's a
added, and
difference of
those are just teachers regular, putting aside, what we've just been discussing about guidance counselors and workers, social workers, et cetera, which the social workers and psychologists numbers seem to be pretty steady over the years, as far as I could tell.
Difference of 15 staff members between the 472 and 457, if my math is correct.
Correct.
So
And that's exactly 8 science teachers and 7 world language.
those were additions made throughout the last several budget cycles.
Yeah. So right now, I think, Dr. Frederick, we have 7 world language teachers at the elementary, about to roll up to 8.
That's correct.
So that's 7 plus 8 is 15.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, can I just mention one thing regarding enrollment? Because obviously we have seen a decrease in enrollment, a steady decrease in enrollment over the last 10 years. However, our latest numbers are actually starting to trend in the opposite direction. In this current year, we had a slight decrease, but it was actually, the number of students was actually higher than we had projected for the 22-23 school year. And our demographic experts that we consult with have actually, as we always do, look out 10 years. And the trends right now are that we're going to level off and actually start to go up a little bit over those 10 years. So I think the time of the steady decline is over, and now we're starting to see it trend potentially in the other direction.
Thank you, Mr. Riccinelli.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Yes, Mr. Arnold.
You were mentioning science teachers. Could you explain what the science-based assured experience for grade 3 represents?
Yes, Mr. Arnold. Dr. Fettig will be more than happy to tell you about this great experience we are developing for all third graders that will be in partnership with one of our great city organizations.
Yes, thank you for the question. So for many years now, our students in grades 3, also in grade 1, historically have had the opportunity to go to the Audubon Society. We're really blessed with all of these miles and miles of shoreline. And it really was pretty much, a nice field trip that the kids took. In this case, with this grade 3 assured experience, we want our grade 3 students to really have the opportunity to act and engage in the work of scientists. So our students will be at the Audubon Society engaging in real-time research. They'll be collecting data. Their research findings will be shared not only with the folks at the Audubon, but beyond. And they'll be able to engage with scientists in the field. So that experience will be something that happens at the Audubon Center, but also because we have STEM labs in each of our 8 elementary schools, the students will be able to engage in that prolonged continued study when they go back into their school buildings.
Okay, thank you.
We might need some chaperones for that, Mr. Arnold.
Well, I think Brian Lima would help that.
I'm around.
Since you're explaining programs, what is the new middle school math program?
Well, we're in pilot phase right now, and it is a deep secret as to which one we're picking. Wink, wink, but maybe Dr. Fettig could share a little bit more about that.
We are actually studying 2 different programs, but one of the things that's really important to us in Milford Public Schools is that we don't just adopt wholesale programs. We take a look at what is recommended practice and what are the most high quality resources in the field. So we'll take a look at a number of programs. We'll take a look at the standards that are required for our students. In this case, really preschool through grade 12, because we want to make sure that the programs that we select fit into the curriculum that we're developing so that our kids are supported in their mathematics learning all the way through the system as they progress. Something to note about the curriculum, I'll say, not just the programs and resources that we're vetting, are not only their really clear alignment to the standards, but the opportunities that they'll give our student mathematicians to practice mathematics the way we all learned it, right? We know that children need a balance of facts and fluency, but as they move through the grades, the opportunity to practice what are referred to as math practice standards. So beyond just the simple mathematics, opportunities to engage in inquiry and performance tasks and more complex problem solving. And that would be an example of what we're looking at the middle school. And children will have the opportunity to infuse technology more with their mathematics study all the way through, especially beginning in 6th grade. And this will support our students in taking advanced courses as they move through toward the high school as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm gonna chain to with the STEM, the robots in the middle schools. Where is that coming? Like, we approved a bond for equipment. Where is the line of demarcation? Where, what covers what?
So we were able to purchase some of those robots with ESSER ARP money, but we didn't have enough funds in that area for that. And this would be an immediate need. We actually have robots in our middle schools that they no longer make parts for. That's how old they are. And they are essential to develop the implementation of the curriculum. The tech ed money I think you're talking about from the capital improvement is for bigger equipment that is related to some career paths that we have in place and are developing. I don't know, Mr. Riccitelli, what the amount of the robots is that's in here. I think it's a small amount. Would you have that number?
I do. If you just give me a second, I will pull it up.
So with a robot in the schools, what's the goal? To learn to program it, control it? What?
Yep, there's a lot of pre-engineering and coding work that is involved in the curriculum. And it doesn't look like a robot like in Hollywood. It's very not fancy. It's a bunch of like boards and little circuits and blocks, and kids learn how to put together different sections of it and then marry it with a coding system on the computer. And at the middle school, it is definitely part of the career path in engineering and technical education. So it's a starter to that thinking and career building.
But part of it is also to build the robot?
Yeah. Mhm.
And I can't put my finger on it right now, but I will get it either before the end of this meeting or I will send it to you.
Thank you. I think Ms. Devaney's in the meeting. I wonder if she's doing some background research for us.
And just to clarify, you're looking for the cost of the robots? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, sir.
I did find it. So it's a 3-pack. It's $8,131 each for a total of $24,393. And that's found in Appendix J on page A21.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So that typically, would that be like a recurring cost? Like it's almost like an instructional piece of equipment that's going to be permanent going forward. It's not like an investment in a machine tool.
No, right. Well, we've had these robots a long time to the point where the manufacturer doesn't make the parts anymore. So I think we've used it's used up its life, but it would not be like a big piece of equipment that we envision needing to purchase out of the capital improvement funds.
Right.
It would be
None of
much
that was-
more like a school supply or resource material.
And none of these were able to be funded through that bond for tech ed? And what was that, $5 million? Was that what we did last month?
Yes, you did, Scott. 5 million, but that's between the two high schools and 3 middle schools. And the majority of that money is going to go toward facility improvements. There's also equipment, but it's the bigger equipment, as Dr. Cutaia said. Tech ed, it takes in so many different things. Traditionally you think of the auto shop and the wood shop and the metal shop. And those things still do exist, but there's some big equipment that needs to be purchased for those areas. These are the smaller robots that are more used hands-on by the students. So we wouldn't, the other thing is when we do a bond authorization, the general rule of thumb is that whatever you're purchasing or whatever you're investing in has to have a 20-year life cycle, and these robots don't. So we wouldn't buy normal equipment for the classroom work out of the bond authorization. That's bigger 20-year investment type stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But just going back to staffing for a minute, I hate to spend so much time on it, but it is, as you noted, 77% of the budget. So a couple questions. Other than the 4 guidance counselors that you anticipate to be moved from the grants into the budget next year, you anticipate any other staffing increases next year, instructional or otherwise?
I think that we could refer you to Roman numeral 15. Is that correct, Mr. Riccitelli?
Roman numeral 14. Oh, no, you're right. 15. I'm sorry.
You're in the other book, I think, yeah.
Well, not for this year. I'm sorry, for in the next year or two, projected going forward.
In
So next
23,
year- Next year,
24,
you're thinking that four of the guidance counselors would come off the grant funding and into the budget. But I'm wondering if there's any other program driven or other driven staff increases that you anticipate in the future.
so in an effort to look 18 months ahead.
Well, for instance, I mean, you had a goal of adding science teachers to the middle school. Is there a goal to add, STEM instructors to the high school, given the new, the $5 million investment in equipment or capital improvements or anything along that line?
So
Or
I'll
existing
speak in,
personnel?
I'll speak in generalities, because a lot of this hasn't been, fleshed out through my board. So generally speaking, we are interested in building career paths starting in 6th grade. We have some already in the pipeline, but they need to be more clearly defined, and they need to be much more greatly diversified. We have a 4-year, 5-year plan on adding career paths, which means in terms of budgeting, offering more options to kids at the middle and high school level. One reason why we changed the middle school schedule is in preparation to give kids voice and choice. So in order to provide more choice, more diversification of experiences, a better pipeline to being prepared for career or college, we're going to be offering more courses, which potentially, like I was saying earlier, could result in a smaller class sizes because the classes are becoming more specialized. So there's a possibility in that plan, Mr. Lima, that we're looking at staffing in general, and there could be offsets as we plan this. So it's not always going to be an exercise in addition. It could also be an exercise in subtraction. I'll recognize that. At the elementary level, in the next couple of years, it's our plan to revisit the elementary schedule, how we implement enrichment for all students, and the use of our specialists. There's likely going to be an increase in FTE in the special areas there. But again, we're probably 2 or 3 years out, and I haven't spoken to my Board of Education yet. So as we build innovation and programming, I believe that there's always the possibility of 1, reducing staff, and 2, increasing staff. But I assure this board that our decision in those will be made based on the needs of the students in front of us, the needs of the staff that we are employing, and feedback from our stakeholders, particularly families. So we plan to engage all those voices before we add or subtract staffing. I know that's a very general answer with some specific examples, right? Yeah. But it's fair to say that there could be addition or subtraction of FTEs based on our programming.
Understood. I guess to just focus specifically on the $5 million bonding authorization that was passed. That, as I understood it, was going into the STEM program and facilities related to that.
Yes.
As of today, do you anticipate just using existing staff to fill the new facilities or utilize the new improvements, or do we anticipate that might include well, maybe not new staff, but different type of staff, professionals?
There could be an impact in some of the CTE courses. Last year, we had a serious conversation with our middle school staff to add an additional tech ed teacher at the middle schools. We were seeing larger class sizes. You don't want a lot of 28 kids in a tech ed class because of equipment and safety. We actually posted for additional tech ed teachers, and there wasn't a single application. So that kind of stopped our plan in that area. We do want to offer more 21st century based tech ed courses. So it could end up being that we could deliver that through the tech ed staff that we have, which I believe is 1.0 at each school, right, Dr. Fedigan? So we have one full-time tech ed teacher for the entire school. We've expanded tech ed to offering it to all grades 6, 7, and 8. And if we add courses, we'll just have to see how that pans out.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guitar.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
I'm
that's
using
very
I'm using
helpful.
the crystal ball to answer the question, so
Yes. Thank you.
thank you.
And keeping the theme of asking questions about bonding. On the executive summary, it doesn't have a page number, I'm sorry, but talks about the state mandates for HVAC evaluations and also menstrual cycle product dispensers K through 8. Again, what was the bonding we did last month relative to the HVAC systems and those dispensers?
Sure, I could answer that, Mr. Moulton. What we're talking about for the state mandates, the first one is there's now a requirement on this, that's a state law, that we must provide menstrual products in all schools grades 3 through 12 in every female bathroom, every mixed gender bathroom, and at least one male bathroom. That's state law. And so we're just the dispensers, the products themselves aren't the big cost here, but the initial outlay for the dispensers that have to go into the schools. We just took, the cost of the dispensers times the number that we're going to need to put in. And it's a state law that we must abide by. The HVAC is another new statute that is far-reaching, that requires all districts by January of 2024 to do an exhaustive study of its HVAC and exhaust systems. The law is very specific. It's so far-reaching that school districts are concerned that there aren't enough professionals in the field to be able to do these kinds of system studies that need to be done. We, through various organizations, through the Superintendent's Association, the School Business Officials Association, and the Facilities and Grounds Associations, we are doing the best that we can to lobby the state to refine that law, or at least push it out so that we don't have to do all of our schools by January of 2024, because that's a looming date that's coming very quickly. And the scope of the work that needs to be done is really nearly impossible. But we've included in the budget around $100,000 we really do anticipate that the cost of this, this study that needs to be done district-wide at every school will cost closer to $500,000. So, you know, we're hoping for some relief from the state. We're hoping that they will phase it in, or at least refine the scope. But those two state mandates are baked into our budget, because they're state laws that are on the books now.
Gotcha. Okay, so we didn't bond for those. That wasn't part of the bonding we did last month. Okay.
No.
And can any of that, the HVAC part of it, I know through some of the grants that we received, forgive me for not knowing the acronyms, ESSER, EPCA, or whatever. I know there was a lot of money distributed from the state to a lot of municipalities for upgrading, you know, the HVAC systems and ventilation. Are we able to use some of those grants to put towards this mandate? I mean, again, it seems like the state mandates something and then expects you to figure out how to pay for it.
Right. Well, the simple answer is all of the money that's been set aside from the ESSER grant and the ARP grant has already been committed to projects that are already going to take place. $1 million from ARP in the city is going toward air conditioning and HVAC systems at the Pumpkin Delight project. And then the other $1 million that the board is taking from its ARP money is going to various HVAC improvement projects that are already underway or are already planned and will be going underway. So there's no additional money in ARP or ESSER for these studies.
I mean, I mean, that could be a positive thing, because if we're upgrading some of these systems, the evaluation of the systems should go smoothly, right? I mean, if we're contracted to upgrade the systems and all of a sudden they're going to go and inspect them, one would think that it'll cost a little less to inspect these systems. They're brand new.
Yes, over the long run, and we already believe that our systems are in excellent condition. We have a very strong preventive maintenance program for all of our mechanical systems. So we believe that, you know, when these studies are done, we're going to find that we're in pretty good shape to begin with. We don't think that we're going to need to put huge amounts of additional money into improvements. All we think we need to do is continue to maintain the systems that we have.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So the other end of this, you could do the evaluations, find out that there's a huge need for other systems. I mean, and maybe you don't know the answer to this question, but state mandates you do all these evaluations. What if an evaluation uncovers a $25 million problem? Who's paying for that?
Well,
Good guess.
yeah, there's no money. There's no money for it. They're expecting the cities and towns to do it. Now we have 14 schools. There's, you know, the big cities have, you know, massive amounts of numbers of schools. So, and our schools have been very well maintained. As I said, not every school district, you know, has kept up with the maintenance like we have. So it's a huge, far-reaching issue, well-intentioned, and it, you know, it really comes out of the COVID. You know, the need for good quality air systems and airflows in your schools, but there's just it's a huge task with very little time to do it, and could be you know, bigger dollars coming down the road.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm just looking at the same page, a little bit of a shift gear here, but I see the word books typed out a couple times here. Additional K through 3 classroom library books, 6 to 12 English language art books. The Milford Public Library presented to us earlier in the week, and I think they still call it books, but it's a lot of digital books. It's not paper, you know, it's not hard copy. Are we talking digital books or are these good old fashioned turn the
Good
page books?
old-fashioned paper books. We still
What's the
believe.
additional? Yeah. Helps
These
keep
are
the
for classroom
robots,
libraries, Mr. Moulton. We recently revised our literacy program, our literacy curriculum, one, because it needed to be revised, and two, there were some additional mandates from the state, good ones, that these are ones that were needed to make. So we needed to refresh and add to our classroom library. So every classroom has new sets of books that align better with our curriculum, and they're paper copy books.
Are those paper copy books, are those in lesser demand now because of digital channels? Like, is that something we'll see over the next, let's say, 10 years, starting to kind of slowly phase away? Or is it
I hope
we're
not.
just always going to be using books? Yeah.
But it's time for me to retire at that point. I hope we'll never get away from falling in love with books and opening books and looking at pictures and falling in love with story. Like, we're still going to be about that in Milford, while at the same time providing digital options. And I think the older our kids get, the more viable that is. But I will tell you, Mr. Moulton, somewhere along in the last 18 months, we got feedback from kids saying we need to do less with Chromebooks and more with paper and people. So some of our astute high schoolers gave us that feedback. So we'll hear them out in that. And I think we'll continue to invest in paper.
Gotcha.
Well, continuing down the list, what's the justification for the Human Resources Department changes?
Sorry, I'm getting an answer on tech ed. I'm just asking Dr. Fedigan to redo that, to look into that 1.0 tech ed. All right, Mr. Arnold, I'm sorry, you have a question.
The human, you're doing additional teachers and
yeah.
residents. What is that?
So we recently had a review of the Human Resources Department, and actually there's a full presentation which we could share with you that was done to the Board of Ed in November.
Okay, if you email it to me, I'd love to take a look.
Yes,
Email.
we'll have it sent to you. So the review was done in consultation with someone that has experience in HR, along with a committee of our own staff members. And we took a look at the services provided from our Human Resources Department, because as we say, 77% of this budget is about people. And when it comes down to it, we have under our hire about 1,300 employees. And that's a big group of people to be responsible for. So we wanted to revisit HR and ask ourselves, so what are the functions and roles and responsibilities of each person? What does the HR director do? What does each person in the department do? Is there an opportunity here to revisit not only roles and responsibilities, but FTEs? So we are reimagining the department, and hopefully we'll be able to call the Talent Management and Development Office as of July 1st. And that's also having us revisit what each person in that department is doing and adding some additional supports. So we are going to likely revisit the titles and job descriptions and add some support there as well in this budget.
And was one of them an assistant director? Is that?
Yeah.
Detail?
So when we took a look at our HR department and compared it to other companies and school districts across the state, we actually saw that we weren't providing the same level of support, and our staffing, we were understaffed in that department. So right now, we probably do a good job at hiring people by processing their paperwork and making sure they find their classroom and that they have what they need to teach. We don't have any efforts, and we're starting to get hit pretty hard right now, as Ms. Ranges mentioned earlier. We're starting to feel the crunch on teacher shortage. While Ms. Glennon did say we want to continue to have teachers want to come to Milford, we do have highly satisfied employees. We need to be much more proactive and get ahead of this teacher shortage issue. We need to get to universities to recruit. We need to develop our own pipeline, starting in high school, of kids and paraprofessionals even who want to become teachers. We need to partner with universities to develop, to identify interns who will work here and commit to working here in Milford. And we also don't do a great job based on this analysis of supporting those teachers that have been with us for more than 10 years. So that we likely do a better job in supporting the non-tenured people and provide some retirement services to people who are getting there. But there's this whole middle career group of teachers that we have. So based on all that analysis and comparative data, we are seeing that we probably need additional help in that department in the form of an assistant for Ms. Capazza.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I think I have a correction, right, Dr. Reddick? No, we're good. 1.0 for middle school. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, just thinking out loud.
Yes, thank you.
Are any of these system improvements or any of the notes in the executive summaries, are those included Roman numeral 11 under maintenance? I mean, maybe not. I mean, certainly some things like
In the 4,000 series?
you know, yeah, 4,000 series. Because it's a pretty big increase in percentage. You know, it's a 19% increase overall in that series, and I'm just not seeing things in the highlights. You know, the system improvement summary or the executive summary here that would
No.
necessarily explain that that larger increase.
So
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Ricciarelli.
Sure. Okay, so referring on to Roman numeral 11, you'll see that where the dollar amounts are, and the contracted maintenance increases 259,000, and 150,000 of that is the state mandates for the menstrual cycle and the HVAC improvements. The building projects and grounds projects, those they appear to be big increases, but the last year on building projects we budgeted 299,000, and on grounds projects we budgeted 51,211. So the increase looks big. However, I can assure the board, even though between those two there's about what is it, $176,000, we have over $8 million worth of buildings and grounds projects that are on our priority list. So we barely scratch the surface here, but that's the reason for the increase is that big contracted maintenance cost and the increased amount of buildings and grounds projects. But in the scheme of things, it's really quite small.
So really the only thing on the executive summary that's noted in there is the HVAC and the state mandates there in the
Yes.
contracted maintenance. Okay, gotcha.
Correct. Yes.
And what are some examples of what are we doing for building projects?
Those are listed actually in the back, in the
Yeah,
details
4,000.
section. Yep, let me get you the page.
Page
If
I could
820.
add, if I could add while Mr. Rich is looking for the page. These are the two lines that the board grapples with year after year after year, whether we should be funding buildings and grounds maintenance more robustly. Typically, we see one project per school gets funded. And it's, you know, it's typically it's the line that typically gets, I'll say shortchanged because it's the easiest thing to reduce. But we do grapple with it every single year.
Yes, we do. And that the list of those projects is on page 820 in the appendix section.
I see it. So thank you for directing my eyes there.
Sure.
Okay, well, we were talking about human resources a little bit, and this is a problem for both the city side of the budget and your side of the budget. The health insurance for self-insurance contributions, the self-insurance fund. And there's a $4 million increase this year. Over the last 2 years, that line item has increased by 50% from 16 million to 25 million. That shows up in the city side of the budget. And I am frankly not sure, does the city have the personnel that handles that directly, or does the Board of Ed also have people that evaluate, I call them risk managers or insurance professionals who are dealing with those issues in human resources or otherwise? Because obviously a 50% increase over 2 years is significant, and I realize a lot of that's beyond our control, but I didn't know if there was anything ongoing within the Board of Ed in regards to that issue.
Sure, I can address that, Mr. Lima. The board knows that the self-insurance, the health insurance fund on the city side of the budget pays for the health insurance benefits for our active employees on the
Right.
board side. And in the Board of Education budget, account 2006 is the retiree benefits. So we pay on the board side all the retiree benefits, and we're seeing, we're seeing big increases. Although we did have a considerable decrease 2 years ago on the Blue Cross Blue Shield side because we went to an Advantage plan for a Medicare Advantage plan as opposed to the traditional Medicare plan. However, to answer your question, we do have a benefits coordinator who takes care of all of the board employees, paperwork, claims, things like that. And then it goes to Anthem, who does the administering. So we take care of our board employees and the city takes care of the city employees as far as the administration of the claims.
And this, I suppose, is a question for you or Peter, whoever. Again, it may be more or less out of our control, but yeah, it seems to me that if it's possible, and it may not be, if you're rearranging human resources department to, have someone focus on that area, because the, $4 million increase and then 9 million over 2 years is fairly significant. So again, it may be an issue that we can't have any control over, but to the extent we can, I'd certainly like to see it be addressed in some fashion. And then is that figure include the city figure include people who are just funded through the Board of Ed budget, or does it also include grant people who are funded through grant, employees who are funded through grant funds, paid through grant funds?
It's both.
It's both.
Yeah. Although the grant pays for the benefits.
It does. Okay. So the grant will pay for the benefits, so that those funds would be somehow transferred on the books of the city, between the two, between Board of Ed and the city. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I believe so. Peter, can you jump in there? I may be, I'm a little fuzzy on this one.
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, to you, Mr. Chairman, to the board as well. I'll speak for the city side, for example, where in as a general rule, the grants do pay for the benefits, and then that payment is transferred into our health insurance fund. So it helps to offset the contribution that's made each year through the budget.
Okay, so then, and this may be, so does this budget figure, the 25 million, represent the net after allocation of the grant? Or with that, is that the total amount, and then that payment would be reduced by whatever grant funds are available to?
It's the net. So whatever grant funds are available, whatever premium, cost share, other revenue that goes into the health insurance fund, that helps to offset the budget. And so this is the net result.
Okay,
Thank you, Peter.
thank you both. I know it's. Okay. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground. And we did not proceed as I initially indicated that we would. We had more like an open dialogue, which I think is useful. So I appreciate everyone's questions and input. I don't think I will turn pages unless somebody would like me to. But I would also invite any members of the board, if they do have any further comments or questions on the budget, please address them now.
I do have Mr. Chair, through you.
Yes.
Question about the tuition for the gifted and other magnet schools went up by $14,000 to 30%. What changed?
Sure, I can address that, Mr. Arnold. We out of that account, we pay for tuitions to the 6-to-6 magnet school. And last year we had 3 students. This year there are 6 students who are attending 6-to-6. So we're obligated by law to pay the tuition for those students. So that's the difference there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, on Roman numeral 11, the utilities account for electricity, I do see an anticipated savings of approximately 50,000. Is that due to any particular factor? Is it because I think most of our schools have solar? Is that a factor from solar, or is it energy reduction, or some combination of the two?
Really what it is, it's not energy reduction. If anything, during the COVID years, we had energy consumption increases because we had to run all the exhaust fans at 100% almost all of the time. So consumption actually went up out of necessity, but the cost of electricity skyrocketed in the 21-22 year, which then went into the 22-23 adopted budget. So since then, we've now locked in the electric prices and gas prices went sky high last year. Since then, we've locked in for both our gas and our electricity. So we're stable again. We're not at the mercy of the market like we were for about a 2 or 3 month period where it was impossible to lock in because of the volatility in the market. Now we're again locked in. So coming off 2 bad years, we feel pretty confident about this year.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller.
Sure.
Okay, so since we're going through this, can you just explain to me what the difference is between textbooks and text adoptions?
Dr. Fedigan, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Textbooks would be more like the AP selection that we had discussed earlier when Dr. Katai was talking about some outdated texts that we have. Text adoptions would include, for example, classroom libraries.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? Right. Well, Dr. Kataya, thank you. Dr. Fedigan, Mr. Richatelli, and Chairperson Glennon, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it.
We're
And
thankful for the opportunity to talk to you more about it, Mr. Lima and Board of Finance members. We're grateful for this opportunity.
our pleasure, and good luck with the rest of the school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Have
care.
a good night.
You too. Thank you all. The board members, just a reminder, we will continue the public hearing tomorrow in person, conference room B, 5:30. Technical session and to review the city budget, et cetera. So I would entertain a motion to recess until tomorrow at 5:30.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we recess until March 2nd, Thursday, 2023, where we'll reconvene in person in conference room B at the Parsons at 5:30.
Thank you. There's a motion. Seconded by
I'll s-
Lauren. Thank you.
Got it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We will see everybody tomorrow night. Thank you all.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Take
Have a
care.
good evening. Thank you.